Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 2, Episode 3, Thanks for the Memory, with the help of my guest, Feline Ranger. Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Yeah, and it's a great to have you on. Because obviously you're a long-standing member of our particular community. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'd probably know this, but I mean, for the benefit of our listeners, how did you get into the show?
Well, funnily enough, it was this particular episode, I think, that we're going to discuss today, that actually was my intro to Red Dwarf. I believe my older sister was up watching it. And it was that scene, where they wake up and, they got the foot in the cast and they're trying to figure out what's happened. And Cat does his whole, I wouldn't like to be around when one of these suckers is making a speech. I think just at the time, that's the only scene I remember seeing before I was kind of hustled off to bed. But it obviously stuck with me. And I was just, obviously 9 or 10-year-old me was thinking, oh, this is funny. This is something different. This is something new. And probably a few months later, I was allowed to stay up and watch the whole of The Last Day, which was like the first full episode I saw, and just kind of immediately established a hyperfixation which has lasted, 20 odd years.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, it's nice that you I mean, I really enjoy sort of listening to all these different stories from people as to how they got into it. This is obviously a very popular episode. I mean, well, amongst across the entire fan base, I think really. I mean, everyone seems to love it, and that includes me. And But I mean, with more sort of regard, in particular to our particular area of fandom. I mean, it occurs to me.
Speciality.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very slashy, but also it's kind of like a why people like or identify with or lust after Rimmer summary in one episode.
Yeah, definitely. There's just what an episode this is. It's just got so much stuff in it. It's got like this brilliant sci-fi concept as well, which I think tends to get overlooked with the emotional stuff. But it's such a brilliant sci-fi concept to be able to cut and paste memories into other people.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's fascinating.
I mean, obviously, it's very sort of it raises a heck of a lot of ethical questions, which we can probably get into later. But I mean, it's a wonderful dramatic idea as well.
Yeah, and just from an emotional standpoint, it really is a standout episode in terms of what we know about the characters and their characterization and about their relationship with each other. And it really is kind of a real seminal point in the series for what that relationship is and how it develops, I think.
Yeah. Because, I mean, obviously it had, already started the process of sort of softening Rimmer from an antagonist to more of a sort of co-protagonist had already started, in sort of B Squared and even the episode before this, One Better Than Life. But I mean, this is kind of the episode where it really sort of cements that, because you see him, drunk and vulnerable, and totally genuine. He drops all the macho posturing, and he's so pathetic, and pathetic in a good way, if you know what I mean, and sort of lovable. That's. I mean, if you only watch this episode, you'll get a completely false impression of the show, really, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's an oddly tender moment, isn't it? And they have had those episodes through the years that have been, a little more emotive, but this is one of the ones that they kind of really did kind of go soft and weren't really afraid to go soft, which is nice, I think. And so much.
I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Considering that so much of the crew's interactions, and Lister and Rimmer specifically, is they're bitching at each other, aren't they? And they're squabbling and bickering. But this is one of those odd episodes where it's like, actually, there's some tenderness here, and however you want to view that, there is affection as well. And yeah, I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of view it however you choose. I mean, obviously, you can sort of view it in a platonic way, which I mean, I know a lot of fans do, or you can view it differently as we choose to. I mean, it really does work either way.
Yeah, it's really rich in characterization. This episode, it gives us, so as you say, it's particularly for Rimmer, we see a side of Rimmer we don't normally get to see, but also. I think this is true of all of series 2, actually. A lot of the characterization really started to kick in this series. But it's an episode that tells us an awful lot about Lister as well, and who he is as a person, and who he was in a way before the accident as well. A bit more of his past and what kind of guy he was when he was just a regular guy on Earth.
It's
So
true, yeah. I mean,
that
of course,
caring side of him really kind of comes through in this. That need to be kind.
yeah, you're right. I mean, yes, I mean it's more obvious what we learn about Rimmer, but I mean we do actually learn quite a lot about Lister as well. It's just kind of more subtle, more sort of in the background. I want to sort of start with the opening scene, because I really love that opening scene. It always sort of raises my spirits, because they're
It's
partying and they're
great.
having fun. Everyone's having fun, even Holly and the Scutters. It's just so heartwarming.
Yeah, again, it's a little joyful moment, isn't it, in what can be sort of quite a bleak, life that they have. And although it's not established in the episode, I like to headcanon that this whole little escapade of, going out and celebrating Rimmer's death day was Lister's idea.
I think it must have been, because I think Rimmer would probably been too proud to request it, and obviously the cat would never have dreamt of it, and but I don't think it would have occurred to Holly. So the only person who really could have persuaded everyone to do it when organised it is Lister. Let's face it,
Yeah. I have like this kind of image of, Rimmer sat there with his arms folded, like, oh, it's the anniversary of my death and no one cares, and Lister being like, no, let's do something. Let's, we'll go out. I'll bake a cake, and it'll be fun, and let's celebrate it. Let's turn it into something positive. And that's just such a Lister thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so sweet and so endearing. Of course, obviously Rimmer can't actually eat the cake, but it's kind of the thought that counts, I suppose.
Yeah.
I assume Holly kind of must have conjured up a sort of hologrammatic cake for him, hopefully.
Yeah. And the only appearance we see of the hologram projection cage, I noted. What happened to that?
Yeah, I think they just realised it was clunky and it didn't work, and they dropped it, I think, basically.
They used the remote belt or something later on, didn't they?
Yeah. Of course, the hard drive remote belt. Oh, of course. Well, after this, I think they sort of dropped the whole issue of how can he do it until they introduced the concept of the light bee in Meltdown. So, yeah,
don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. Of course, the light bee is a lot more sort of portable.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah. Moving on to the famous sandwich scene, which I've seen so many gift sets of this scene on Tumblr. It's probably the most gift Red Dwarf scene on Tumblr, I think. But I understand why it's lovely,
It's a lovely little scene, isn't it? And as you say, it's during this series we really start to see a different side of Rimmer, and he becomes someone who's not just unlikable. He becomes more sympathetic. He becomes more pitiable, and you start to see the potential of someone underneath that layer of unpleasantness who might actually be nice to have around.
Yeah, you do. And of course, this is where we finally get his honest perspective on the Magruder incident. He's been sort of being all macho about it and making hand gestures, and I gave her one. Even the episode before this, but this is what he actually thinks about it, and it's quite different, He thinks it's pathetic. He's pathetic, and it's just so much more attractive than going around making stupid hand gestures.
Yes, absolutely. It shows that kind of a rare self-awareness from him, doesn't it, as well? That he kind of realizes that actually, all this stuff that I've been, doing and saying, it's all just, yeah, it's him sort of recognizing, as you say, that he's a little bit pathetic, and that, as he says himself, that he's left it all a little bit on the late side
Yeah.
and missed out because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I did want to mention someone on Tumblr actually I'll credit them. I'll credit them just in case that they happen to be listening. Someone called Greg Tom pointed out that the song he sings, the song Rimmer sings, Someone to Watch Over Me is from a musical, and it's a song which tends to be more often sung by female singers, so it's kind of interesting, that's in his most vulnerable, honest moment that this is a song that he chose, I mean,
Yeah,
to be the song for him and a significant other, it's just
it's a
well
very
really,
fitting. Yeah, it's a very fitting song for Rimmer, isn't it? Because he's always had this thing of nothing's ever his fault, is it? It's all, it's always his parents' fault. It's always Lister's fault. And then this song is him saying, actually, what I need is someone who's gonna fix everything for me, because if everything else is someone else's fault, he needs someone else to make it right. So
yes, I mean it does make sense that he wants someone to sort of take charge, and I mean Lister, to some extent does take charge, I mean he does. I mean, not so much in series two, although you could argue the seeds are sown here with the obvious fact that he must have organised a Death Day party. It becomes more obvious in sort of series four and series five. That Lister has assumed the mantle of leader of the crew. I mean, you can miss it because he doesn't go around saying I'm in charge. Because that's not what Lister does. But I mean, when there's an emergency, Lister steps up.
yeah, definitely. And that's what Rimmer needs, isn't it? And it's him kind of admitting that he can't do pretty much anything by himself. He needs someone to watch over him. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting that I mean, when he sings that song, he gives Lister a sort of look, for a moment, almost as though he's trying to say, do you get? Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing this to you. Do you get it? And then just for a second, and then he gives up and goes to bed.
yeah. And he says, doesn't it? There's that fraction of a moment where he says this was going to be our song, and then there's a pause, and he says, "But I never found anyone to share it with."
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, almost as though he's sort of hinting at Lister, and Lister, of course, doesn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole scene is a cry for help, really, isn't it? And
It really is, and
however you
Lister.
view that relationship, it's
Yeah,
him
Lister
kind of.
answers the cry. I mean, not in the way that Rimmer wanted him to, but he does. I mean, I do love Lister's expressions here. As Rimmer is sort of pouring his heart out. I mean, he gets more uncomfortable. And starts and fiddling with the jigsaw pieces, and and I mean, it's very sort of subtle acting from Craig. I mean, he's not always subtle in the early series. But you can see him improving episode by episode, really.
Yeah, and I think Doug Naylor said pretty much the same thing, that Craig's strength as an actor is really in the emotional stuff, and yeah, this
Mhm.
is one of the earliest episodes where they do really get that kind of drama in a sense to work with, and yeah, it does shine in this episode, that kind of, whether it's this scene or that final scene up in the obs dome where he's kind of talking to Rimmer. There's a real earnestness there and a real honesty.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
earnestness is a good way to put it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've always thought in this particular scene, it's almost the first time that we see him genuinely being friendly to Rimmer, as opposed to just sort of bantering back and forth.
yeah. I mean, he really has made an effort. I mean, so we're headcanoning that he, organised the party and everything. We can't prove it, But when he sort of says to him, no, nothing's too good for the Death Day boy. He's kind of spoiling him.
Yeah, it's sweet. It really is. I mean, obviously you don't have to, be into their relationship in that way to enjoy it. I mean, it works perfectly on either level, But it's just so sweet.
And then of course he goes and spoils it all.
Yeah. Oh yes, of course. Yeah. We have to. We should probably move on to the part where it goes. Well, actually, firstly, let's move on to the bit where Rimmer is. How do I put this? Sort of drunk on love. I mean, that's probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, and I made a note. You can see I'm taking this seriously. I've made notes.
Good, thank you.
We get of Rimmer with Lisa, where he's dreaming about it. Is the theme that's playing over that is kind of like a cheesy version of what some of the fans have dubbed the the observation dome love theme. And so,
oh, right, I must admit I hadn't noticed that. Well spotted.
Yeah, it's this kind of cheesy version, and then when we get that observation dome scene later, where Lister goes up, that's where we get the actually kind of more emotive and pure, if you like, version of that theme tune, which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of wish that someone, had at some stage asked Howard exactly what Howard Goodall exactly what he was thinking when he wrote them that particular score for the observation dome scene, because it is so. It's beautiful and poignant, but I mean, you could very easily read it as romantic, in context, so.
And indeed, in this context, they did use it as romantic. So,
I mean, I guess it's deniable. I mean, I'm sure Howard probably doesn't even remember what he was thinking at the time. He'll probably just say, "Well, I was just responding to what I saw in front of me." I mean, etc.
Curse that plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. Yeah, that is such a thing. I mean that sort of persists all the way up to the moonlight scene in the Promised Land. To be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a fun little scene, isn't it? Just kind of watching Rimmer kind of running his mouth and obviously not realizing what the real.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, and obviously Rimmer's crumpled shirt is such a good touch. I mean, he's all dishevelled and relaxed and happy. And it's.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's meant to be funny, but you kind of think it really did take him a while to kind of get what was going on. For no reason at all, I suddenly moved to Liverpool. Really? It comes in well slowly, doesn't it? Proper slowly.
You can't really blame him, because I mean, who would think that your bunkmate would decide to paste his memories into yours? I mean, not something you would automatically think of. But yeah, I mean, he should have realised that something was wrong. But I mean, and again, he was so happy. That obviously he wouldn't want to think about it too hard, would he? Or he'd want to just sort of revel in the new feelings.
Yeah, he's still in that afterglow, isn't he?
Yep. I mean, I'm trying not to fangirl too much, but I mean, this is just such a fangirly episode. It's difficult not to.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And the whole thing as well of the brilliant sex, fantastic sex. Just it's so funny. Just it's so stupid, but it's hilarious.
It really is, yeah. Then, of course, I mean, I guess we're going to have to move on to the part of the episode where it all goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really well sort of done sort of mystery, because I mean, as I think it was Rob who says on the documentary, it seems an interesting idea to do a mystery when there's literally only four of them there. A sort of a who done it, who could have done it. There's nobody else around.
Yes, and you get that little thing, don't you, of the aliens as well. That
Yep.
it's been less of a thing, hasn't it, in the sort of the later series? But yeah, Baby Rimmer with his alien obsession again, it's quite
Baby
endearing.
Rimmer was so obsessed with aliens. You know, it's. I mean, I think it's good that they dropped it, because if he was still going on about it, it would probably have lost its charm. But it's sweet in the early series.
Yeah, and just Kat's reaction as well. As I say, that kind of scene was, I think, probably the first bit of Red Dwarf I ever saw, and it's just stuck in my head that Kat just comes in with that absolute blinder of a line at the end and then sweeps out.
Of course. I wouldn't be allowed. Wouldn't like to be around when these suckers and make his speech. It's just yeah. I mean,
very good writing. Very good writing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and interestingly, actually, I mean, Rimmer in that scene is. I mean, he's very sort of chirpy and happy and relaxed. Even though this is after they've erased their memories of Lisa Yates. So I don't know. Maybe he's got some lingering after effects.
And also, he doesn't have a broken leg, so he can afford to be chirpy.
He's the only one who's not in physical pain. Yeah. So moving on to the where they realise there's something wrong, and they find the black box and start watching the recordings. I mean, and then you realise what's happened, and then you suddenly sort of cut back to Kat, Lister, and Rimmer, and Rimmer says, "How could you do this to me? It's the most heartbreakingly tragic thing." I mean, and then I've always been struck by the fact that even Kat looks sympathetic and offers him popcorn. I mean, that is probably the most sympathetic I've ever seen Kat be to Rimmer.
Yeah, and I did make a little note as well that Kat and Lister in this episode, and I think through a lot of series 2 and 3, are just such a brilliant little comedy pairing, aren't they? And such a brilliant little bro TP.
OCP, exactly.
Yeah, even the fact that Lister actually goes and wakes Kat up to come down to the hologram simulation suite with him. He wants his buddy with him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this. Come and watch. Come join in." And
so sweet. Yeah, and I did notice actually, Kat in this episode wears a normal spacesuit instead of a snazzy gold one. Even
Oh yes, he's starting to assimilate.
Yeah, he's starting to sort of adjust, and maybe not obsess about his appearance every single second of the day.
That little thing where they're kind of doing the charades in the cockpit behind Rimmer's back is just
it is kind of odd though. Kat is so scornful that Rimmer's only had to text once, because that is still one more time than Kat's.
Yes, there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on there, but it's Kat, so what can you do?
I think the way Kat probably thinks is the only reason he's a virgin is because he hasn't met any lady cats. I mean, I think he literally does think that,
Yeah, he definitely thinks if he'd had the opportunities Rimmer had, he'd have been all over that. He'd have been on it like a car bonnet.
I do. I mean, that's quite some expression.
So just Kat and Lister, I think series 2 and 3, their whole little friendship that they have is really adorable. And yeah, this episode is mainly about Lister and Rimmer, but actually Lister and Kat's friendship in this episode as well, I think is really cute.
It really is so sweet. I mean, I think I did also mention, at the very end of the previous episode in the Better Than Life, where they grab each other for protection from the tax man. It's so cute.
Yeah. They're a cute little pair. And that relationship kind of shifts as the series goes on, doesn't it? And Lister adopts more of a kind of parental almost attitude towards Kat, but at this stage they're both still very young and very silly and kind of
it definitely does shift.
At this stage they're still playing together, aren't they? I think that's the thing, that they're both at that sort of same stage of maturity.
Yeah, that's it actually. I think what it is Lister matures and Kat doesn't, or at least it doesn't very much, because I mean Kat does mature a little bit, probably as much as he's capable of maturing, but not as much as the Lister does. So Lister kind of leaves him behind a little bit, for want of a better way to put it.
Yeah, so Kat has kind of, you do see that he's assimilated at this point. He's wearing this spacesuit. He helps out with lugging the tombstone around. He goes along with having his memory wiped, but he's started to be kind of like, yeah, these are my people.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing, to be honest, that Lister managed to get him to lug a very heavy gravestone around. I mean,
Especially considering how it turned out.
yes,
Like, all right,
God.
never helping you again.
Right. Okay. You did want to discuss Lisa Yates as well, because obviously, from what we see of her, I mean, she's a very appealing person. Everything we hear about her is positive. But you did wonder, how she would have felt, if she wasn't long dead, about Lister sharing those intimate memories with Rimmer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like dwell on it too much, but I think it's just worth raising that question, that it is a very intimate memory, not just for him, but also of her. And,
Yes. Yeah.
I'd like to think, that she's kind of up there in heaven or whatever plane of reality looking down on them going, God, I really was good, wasn't I? And maybe finding the whole thing, very satisfying.
I
But
mean, it'd be nice to think that she would have been flattered and touched. God, I was that good that he
yeah,
still remembers me.
like, I could turn this whole guy's life around, just the memory of how good I was. But,
I mean, I really, really, really hope that that is how she would have felt about it, as opposed to being feeling that it was some kind of violation, for want of a better way to put it. I mean, I really, really hope that she would have been flattered.
yeah, I guess it just came into my head because there's all this stuff at the moment about the Pam and Tommy series about the leaked sex tape, and yeah, it just kind
Yeah.
of struck me that there's a sort of a similarity there, that Lister, in a sense, has shared their sex tape with Rimmer, and that
Oh yeah,
she
I
may have
mean,
had thoughts
well,
about
I
that.
hadn't thought in that sense, but I mean, you could put it that way, couldn't you? I mean, you can't, you really could. I
Yeah,
mean, I guess at least Lister only shared it with one person, not with the whole world, but still,
yeah. Yeah, so I don't want to dwell on it, and I'd like to think, as you say, that she was kind of flattered by the whole thing if part of her up there was watching them. But yeah, I thought it was worth just pointing out. But
Yeah. Whilst we're on the topic of Lister's love interests, you do kind of wonder, why he didn't fixate on Lisa rather than Kochansky. I mean, he was with Lisa for longer than he was with Kochansky. I mean, it was 8 months as opposed to 3 weeks, and that's in the retcon continuity. I mean, at this stage of the show, he's not supposed to have never even dated Kochansky. So I mean, in some ways, it would have made more sense if he'd fixated on Lisa, on getting Lisa back, really. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, the heart wants what the heart wants, doesn't it? And it, in this case, it wanted Kachansky, but I think in this case, it was more they were just kind of a flag up, weren't they? That how immature he was back then,
Yeah, I
and
mean, of course, obviously, I mean, he was immature. I mean, that was why he made the mistake of breaking up with her. I mean, obviously it was a mistake on various levels. I mean, firstly because she was great, and secondly because if he hadn't broken up with her, he would probably have stayed on Earth and not got stuck in space 3 million years in the future. But oh well, what's done is done.
And it's about that realization for him as well, isn't it? That it not just that the breakup was a mistake, but that actually his behavior towards her was not, was not in line with how he sees himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I do like that Robin Doug put that in, because I mean they didn't have to, but I mean they did, make the point, that Rimmer sort of, well, Lister himself says that Rimmer fell in love with Lisa, and in a way that he didn't, So I mean, it's interesting that they chose to put it like that.
Yeah, but it's a little learning curve for him as well, isn't it? As well as for Rimmer.
Exactly. I mean, and he does, he does genuinely apologise to him. He says, "Sorry, I thought I was doing you a favour." So I mean, I guess at least he apologises, and he does genuinely mean it. Mm.
Yeah, the remorse is genuine, isn't it? That's
Yeah. And of course, from a slashy perspective, it is very interesting that Rimmer basically knows what Lister and Lisa are like in bed. I mean, it's interesting.
yeah. And as you say, there's that question at the end, isn't there, of do they actually attempt to wipe their memories again? Or do they just kind of give up at that point and go, this is just a mess we're going to have to live with?
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder. I think what would probably have happened was they would have tried it a few more times. They would have encountered exactly the same problem, of being like, well, what the hell's going on? And they would have gone through it a few more times, and then they would have given up and said, oh, let's just forget it ever happened.
I love the idea of them going like through an entire week or a fortnight, just constantly leaving themselves notes going, just leave it alone, just, forget about it. And every time going, I'm not listening to that guy. I'm going to, exactly like they did with Holly the first time round.
Holly did warn them, don't play it, and they still went ahead and did it. I don't know. Maybe if Holly recorded all of them saying, "Look, this is a message to everybody from all of us. Do not play this. We're warning you." Maybe that would have worked. I don't know.
As we know from series 10 now, that approach doesn't tend to work on Lister.
That is a good point. And it's true.
Don't tell me what to do, me.
It's true, I guess. It's kind of human nature, if you know something's happened to you and you can't remember it, it doesn't matter how many times even you yourself is telling you, stop it. You really, really, really do not want to know this. You're still going to want to know it, aren't you? It's kind of human nature.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows how long that little time loop went on with them just consistently refusing to listen to
I think it would have been at least a few times before they finally agreed to give up. Yeah. Right. Okay. So moving on to the end of the episode, which is basically the observation dome scene and the whole end of the episode. I'm always very struck by how very, very somber the whole end of the episode is. It's like space here is so howlingly empty and lonely, and you never get that sense again quite so much of how very, very alone they are. It's very touching.
Yeah, and it's that sadness in a way, isn't it? Of Rimmer's had that experience and that opportunity to learn and grow from it, and he's kind of rejected it, hasn't he?
Yeah, it is sad. As Lister says to him, if you go through life without feeling, you know better than a bank manager. And it's you could argue, it would be maybe it would be better for Rimmer if he keeps that memory. Of course, maybe he has kept that memory. It seems likely that in the end they did give up, and that he does have somewhere buried in his mind the memory of Lisa, because I think that's just more likely than them eventually deciding to keep their memories erased.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he does have that memory buried somewhere deep in his subconscious, is it better or is it worse? Who knows?
It's kind of reflective of who Rimmer is, that he kind of makes that choice, that he's he was a very vulnerable, he went through a very, very vulnerable period as a child, didn't he, with his family, and the damage they inflicted on him and the bullying inflicted on him, and he's just so reluctant to open himself up to any more hurt, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. We see it. We see it over and over. I think what his family did to him, is he assumes, that anyone who offers him friendliness doesn't actually mean it, because when you get bullied, after a while you distrust everything. You do actually see it in that flashback in the beginning, where one of his classmates is actually genuinely trying to be nice to him, and he completely misunderstands her and thinks she's taking the Smeg at Smeg, and sabotages himself, and that is just so very Rimmer.
Yeah, and it's so it is kind of a somber ending. You get that sense that he has given up on love and ever feeling kind of good about himself in that way. But Yeah, I don't think it's entirely bleak. I think there is that sense that although he hasn't got, Lisa, and that wasn't real, what he has gained is, you start seeing it a family, and someone like Lister who is willing to go out there and do those kind of things for him, and even in Cat, who's willing to lug a gravestone around because, Rimmer decided that was what he wanted, and it's showing what he has gained in that episode as well as what he's lost.
Yeah, that is a nice way of putting it. Yeah, I mean, of course, in sort of characteristic Red Dwarf fashion, I mean, the next episode kind of spoils that a little bit, But I mean, that's what we kind of expect from Red Dwarf, I mean, sort of tonal shift. I mean, well, we'll move on to the next episode in shortly. But I mean, we do get one sort of poignant scene in Stasis Leak, which is sort of like a hangover from this episode almost, But the rest of the episode, Stasis Leak, is quite sort of manic, and very very different in tone to this episode, So.
Yeah, really different. I mean, Thanks for the Memory is a very contained episode, isn't it? It's just them. And
literally just them. Plus, obviously, a few lines from Lisa Yates, and it's also howlingly lonely. And then, of course, in the next episode, it's bustling. They finally get back amongst humans, albeit very briefly. And it's when you watch those two episodes back to back, it's such a tonal shift.
Yeah, and you've got the location shoots. They go down to the hotel on Ganymede, don't they? And yeah, very, very different.
I think we'll sort of start to wrap up now, but I mean, before we do that, I would like to ask you your scores for this episode, both overall and in terms of slashiness.
I mean, overall, I'm going to sound very effusive here, but I think it has to be a 10 because for me, it was the episode that introduced me to the show, and it just ticks all the boxes for me in terms of it's a great plot, it's got the sci-fi element, it's got the characterization, and I think it's just pretty much one of those episodes of the show that is just almost perfect. In terms of slashiness, I mean, it's got to be up there, hasn't it? I mean, you can't get much more slashy than the shared experience, shall we say, that they've or that Lister has given them.
Agreed. Yeah.
So yeah, that's got to be like a 9.5.
That is so interesting. I mean, because I mean, I've more or less given them the same scores. I mean, I love this episode. It's probably my second favourite episode ever. And so I have also given it a 10 out of 10 overall. Because I mean, I really can't pick holes in it. It's just such a good episode.
It is. It is. I'm glad it wasn't just me being like dramatic.
yeah, really, yeah. Mm-hmm. And in terms of slashiness, I think I'd probably give it, say, a 9 out of 10. Because, as you say, I mean, what's slashier than Lister and Rimmer sharing the memories of a former lover? I mean, not many things.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be the full 10 because they didn't actually touch, but
it's true. To be fair, they physically can't. But yes, I agreed.
Gotta save that 10 for Blue.
Oh yes, of course, and probably Demons and Angels as well. To be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just gonna mention one little thing because it was so sweet. The deleted scene where they're drunk and they're going back to their bunks, and Rimmer is crawling on all fours. And he tries to say good night to Cat. Good night, good cat. Good cat night, whatever. That is so funny and adorable.
I know. And again, it's just that little bit of vulnerability, isn't it, that we don't normally get to see.
Exactly, yeah. And to be honest, that is probably the only time in his life that Rimmer has ever said good night, Cat. Or tried to at least.
Yeah, true. Very true.
They just don't usually have that kind of relationship, and it's just. Yeah, I know it's a deleted scene, but I mean, it's just kind of exemplifies this episode, which is so sort of found family, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, I reckon by the time series 12 rolls around, they're all yelling goodnight to each other like the Waltons.
It's possible, in a more sort of sort of upbeat, less kind of sort of emotionally vulnerable kind of way. Yes, so I guess probably, yeah. Okay, I've been lingering on this episode because I love it so much, but I mean I guess we have better bring it to a close now. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologramet for technical help, and also thanks Feline Ranger for guesting. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on either Tumblr or on Discord. The posts where I've linked to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. The episode we'll be covering is the Continuity Nightmare Stasis Leak. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, goodbye.